Hello. My name is Luviga Luis, also known as Master Rui Online. And today I just wanted, to go off on a tangent, talk about a few interesting things that I get asked sometimes as a creative, and I would like to, provide some bit of value in that line. I always get asked about, some tools, hey Rui, man, like, what tools are you using, man? I've been thinking about this, man. Like, I've been trying to use these tools, but they're not working for me. What kind of tools are you using, man? I wanna know. I wanna know so I can do good stuff too. So I get asked that kind of stuff, and I always, obviously, always tell people what I was told when I was in that position, when I was asking professionals during my time, and I was asking them, yo, man, like, what tools do you have, What tools do you use? I want to know your tools so I can be as good as you. So, and they would always say the same thing that I'm going to tell you now, and that is the tools don't really matter as much as your skill, because as much as you're good, as long as you're good, you can easily get what you need done with the tools that you have. So, having said that, you still need to have tools that actually work. There's a difference between tools that are good enough and tools that actually work. You need tools that do work. If you don't have tools that work, then I can understand your viewpoint as to why you're looking for a tool that works. But if you're in a situation where your tools are working and you just want to use the same tool that someone else is using, then that gives you confidence, okay, but but really, you shouldn't be looking at that. You should be looking at getting your skill level better. Because when you watch people like Feng Zhu online and doing some interesting, cool stuff, you notice that they're using Photoshop like 2004. You're like, what? This guy is painting these amazing landscapes using Photoshop 2004, and you're trying to get the same program, and you want to get like 2019, the latest stuff. So it's not really about the latest and the fanciest stuff. It's really about the skill, the drawing skill. Can you understand color? Can you understand form and shape? Because those are really important when it comes to stuff like painting backgrounds, right? So I think I'm gonna do more of background painting, because the video that I'm playing at the moment that you're watching is about me painting a background for GMO, but this background didn't appear in the final work. It didn't appear in the final film that I made. But yeah, you can still see how I painted that. So well, ultimately, like I said, the tools don't really matter, but your skill, the drawing skill, like how good are you at understanding the values of colors, black to gray. By value, I mean uh, what points of your painting are dark, what points of your painting are light. Why are you making that point in your painting lighter than the other points in your painting, which is darker? Why are you doing that? We all understand that the points where things are lighter seem to attract us more, quicker when we look at a painting. We look at what's brightest in a painting first. Then we approach the rest of the painting. We look around the rest of the painting and notice other things. But, you know, what you make lightest or brightest is pretty much your focal point. So if you're trying to play around with, let me say, a bunch of foreground, middle ground, and background, if you did make your background the lightest and your foreground the darkest, we might have more focus on the foreground for simple reasons, obviously, because now you're playing about with light, but at the same time you're playing about with value, and of which when something is really dark, it's really contrasting off the background, right? So you're playing around with that, and it usually gives great and interesting compositions. So what usually happens is that if you end up in that position where you want to play about with like three different layers of the painting, the foreground, the middle ground, and the background, you could have one part of it, be really dark. Let me say you could go with a dark foreground, a grayish middle ground, and a really bright background, or you could play about with a really bright middle ground, a gray background, and a dark foreground. That usually works well, especially if you want to bring your focus to mostly the middle ground, right? And you're making the middle ground really bright, so all the attention is running towards the middle ground, and it's contrasting off the foreground, which is really dark, and it's also contrasting off the background, which is moderately light. It's in a grayish tone. So that's really helpful to know if you're doing background design. If you're making a background for whatever animation point you're doing. Remember, if you're doing it for an animation, just don't forget that the brightest parts of your animation, of your background, is where the animation will occur. You're trying to lead people there, as well as the characters that will be in that scene. So for example, if you make your middle ground really bright, the brightest point of your scene, that means that most of the animation is going to happen in the middle ground, right? You're trying to bring attention to what's happening in the middle ground. So since it's the brightest part, that's where the animation is going to be. But if your animation is going to be on the foreground, then you might as well reconsider making the middle ground that bright. You may as well want to bring the focus here, to the foreground. So you have to watch out for those types of things, depending on what production you're making that background for. Is it just a painting, a random painting? Are you making it for a game? Are you making it for an animation? Also, what's happening in the scene? You need to look at all that stuff. So once you have all that stuff in, then it's helpful for you as a painter to make those interesting decisions that help the animators and the final production, look solid, right? So this let's talk about some of the skills that you might need, to be able to pull that off. Most people do end up in a situation where they just want to do background art, and that's their focus, really. That's where they find their joy, their passion, and that's all right. It's all good. You could concentrate on being a background artist, and that's where you make your bread. That's where you get your kick, right? Then there's other people who would like to touch every single bit of everything, but eventually they're gonna have to get one bit where they're professional. And they're bound to reach a point where they choose: do they want to be animators? Do they want to do just background art? They gotta figure that out. And in any case, today we just talk about background art here, right? Yeah. So and some of the things that may help you do really good background art are you gotta be inspired, obviously, before you begin getting interested in doing background art, right? You gotta be inspired. So there's some really interesting ways to be inspired, right? Some of you may have been inspired by the art you're seeing in anime. Some of you may be inspired by the art you're seeing in film. Some of you may be interested in just the art just because you're an artist. You just like painting landscapes. You've seen really good artwork before, and that just makes you feel good. If you just want to do that, right? So there's many ways you could be inspired, right, to do background art. And for whatever reason you're inspired, that's good, because it just helps kickstart you to start getting into work, right? So some of the inspirations for me to do background art were Miyazaki's films. Obviously, everyone knows Miyazaki very well for film, for his beautiful backgrounds and landscapes, and it's just mind blowing when you watch a Miyazaki movie how much detail is actually put in by the background artists. It's not necessarily Miyazaki doing the background art, but you can tell the direction of his films and the type of artists that he wants on board. That bring that sort of feel, to his movies, and that's why he gets the the acclamation for that. It's mostly because of his choice of staff and test. uh, so really, those films, watching those films, really put me in a position where I really wanted to do some bit of background art, even though originally I had begun as an artist, a comic artist. That's just pretty much what I wanted to do. But I wasn't that good at backgrounds. I could just, figure them out real quick and get a move on. But eventually, I got really, really, really inspired by the backgrounds I saw in Miyazaki's films, particularly. I first watched Spirited Away when I was a kid, and that blew me away, man. I looked for content that looked like that, but by then, we just didn't have that here in Africa, man. We just couldn't find any DVDs with that sort of thing. And eventually, my cousin got a CD for Naruto, and I ended up being able to watch some of the other Japanese animations out there that had impressive backgrounds. Though obviously, having been inspired originally by Miyazaki's films, I ended up looking and searching for other artists out there that were doing interesting stuff, and that's how I ended up planning on guys like Feng Zhu, Sid Mead, Frank Frazetta, the usual industry giants, that are doing amazing background art out there, both in Hollywood and in Eastern animation, right? So these are the guys that really inspire us to try to do the same thing that they're doing, and obviously they had inspirations before them that helped them understand what good work, what good background work is. And that is just, that is your own opinion. What do you think is good at? I may mention these big industry artists, and you may not like their background art. You may not find it appealing, because they all have different styles of doing work, right? You'll have different ways that they actually portray their work, right? And you have your own opinion on that, right? So feel free to disagree with my choice of artists, right? But essentially, you do need those. You do need that sense of inspiration to get you kick started into doing background art, and that's really useful, for you. And you need to do one thing. Once you're inspired, keep on searching for more people, keep on searching for more artists. Get a variety of artists that inspire you. Look at their work every single day. About to cast, but hey, look for their work every fucking day, man. Like, try to get some artwork you look at every day, because that's gonna subconsciously affect your brain to sort of think of your art in different ways, right? When you're looking at different artworks, your brain is also taking in this information, really intentionally or not intentionally. Generally, everything you watch, your brain is taking that in, all that information inside, and it's keeping it. It's like, this might be useful, I'm taking it in. This might be useful, I'm taking it in. If you don't use that information eventually, then your brain will store it somewhere else, but it will be close by if you need it. So it's usually really good to keep on doing a bit of art, and at the same time look at your inspirations. Look at what makes you like their artwork. That's another thing. You need to look at what makes you like their artwork. Look at it. You could like the way Feng Zhu does his best line. His best for the paintings, right? He does, right? You could like his initial technique, but you may not like his final result and the way he renders his work. That could be your thing. You could like the way someone like Sid Mead does his light and shadow and color in general, and the way he commands color, and that could be your thing. You could be really into that. So you take that out from Sid Mead, you take the other thing out from Feng Zhu, and slowly by slowly you're building this sort of style for your own self, where you're taking all these interesting things from all these wonderful artists who have created work for generations and generations, and you're taking the most interesting stuff out and you're using it, right? You're looking at paintings that are done by Michelangelo. You're looking at paintings. We call this master studies, right? You look at those paintings and you take out what you like about them. You look at all those paintings by the masters, the great artists that came before us. That's all information for you to use to better yourself as an artist and to better yourself as a person who wants to do backgrounds, right? And that's interesting, right? That's wonderful. We've grown up in a time where coming across this information is easy. You just Google that stuff and you come up. So it's wonderful. If you want to really be an artist, it's just perfect, right? Everything you need is there, as long as you have internet, right? As you have internet connection, man, then you're good. You're good. Everything you need is around, right? Just need to take that extra step and that extra effort, right? Yeah. So those are great ways to improve. And here's what happens when you're looking at all these different artists and taking in all their different techniques. You need to be careful too, because if you spend all your time looking at only different artists, then you're not going to give yourself enough time to figure yourself out too, right? There'll be times you need to take a break of looking at all this artwork and just do you for a while. Just paint what comes to your mind for a while. Just you and studying the environment, right? You going out and looking at what's happening, outside your door, looking at the birds walking, flying, looking at the cats running around your house, just looking at those little guys and studying how their fur looks like, the environment they're playing in, how does that look like, how is light affecting it, you definitely end up you having a new perspective on things, because you already have this information from all the other artists that you've collected of how they've seen the world, and now you're adding your own information of how you see the world, and that's helping you build your own style and your own way of doing painting, and that's wonderful. You're bound to get better and better at doing that. So what we call that is building a visual library. When you have something you can pull from your mind, from your brain, and the moment someone just wakes you up in the morning and they're like, yo, I want you to paint me a subway. You're like, holy shit, I've never painted a subway before, but you've seen it in your mind, right? It's somewhere in your mind, so you can recreate that in your brain, right? And paint something quite similar to a subway, but that's not easy, right? But you want to create a situation where at least you can block out the basic shapes of how a subway would look like, right? Before you actually do the detailing, because the detailing, you're definitely gonna need some reference for that, right? And that's another tangent I wanted to go to. Reference, right? Is it good? Is reference good? Should you be using reference? Is that cheating? Why the hell are you using reference? That's not your artwork. It's not coming from you. It's not you. That's someone else. That's the other world. You're stealing. No. Don't be lied to. Don't be lied to. Every artist, from your favorite manga artist to your favorite landscape artist, they're all using reference. Everyone uses reference. If you don't use reference, you're actually poisoning yourself. You're literally poisoning yourself if you're not using reference. You gotta use reference. You gotta understand that what you don't know, you don't. Really. What you don't know, you don't. You don't know how a lion walks. You've never seen one. You've never been in the wild with the lion before. You need reference for that. You need to watch those Nat Geo videos. You need to be out there and look for them. You can't just draw a lion out of the blue and say, hey, check out my lion, it's really cool, I drew it from my brain. Yeah, but except it's not a lion, it looks more like a panther. You get what I mean? So you gotta be careful, you gotta use reference. If you don't use reference, you're in a really bad spot right now. You gotta use it when you can, right? So that what you're actually painting exists. You want to paint what is really there, and that's really useful. And that took me, as an artist, that took me a while to understand, because I grew up trying to imitate these wonderful manga artists that were drawing before me, Kishimoto Masashi for Naruto, and for Hiro Mashima for Fairy Tail, guys like Kubo Tite for Bleach, and I enjoyed their artwork. I like what they were doing. Oda for One Piece. I like what they were doing. It was beautiful work. I wanted to be like them, so I would draw pretty much from my brain, from what I remembered, because I was in school, and in school you're not allowed to take any material like that. You're not allowed to have books. We didn't have anything like manga books or anything allowed in there, so you didn't have that, right? So I'll try to draw from my mind, from my brain. I'll be in class and I'm drawing. I'm just drawing nothing but manga the whole time, but I'm stealing that information from all these artists whose manga I've read before, right? And their styles, and I'm trying to replicate those styles in school, and I'm trying to recreate them in the mangas that I make while in school. So that sort of affected the way I draw generally in my artwork. I had a hard time in art school, in art class, because I had these preconceived notions of how a certain character should look like, or someone should look like, which weren't true, because they were all just nothing but manga characters, and they weren't really real people. So that was my issue, and that really didn't change much. So, but I tried to limit how manga like my characters look like, and I tried to take some bit of information from the art classes and understand how that works. But that's not easy if you've only been drawing from your mind and from your brain and from the artists that you've been looking at, whose work you've been inspired by, right? And that's not wrong. It's a fast way to learn. That's how we all learn. We first get inspired and we copy and we look at what our wonderful the people we look up to, what they did. Some of the things that they did may be wrong. They may be having wrong anatomy. We've seen all that. We've seen some really amazing manga artists with really messed up proportions. And people may call that style, but yeah, well, it's always good to know what a style is like, especially when you actually know how the real anatomy is. If you do not know what the real anatomy is like, then you're not able to recreate the right character when need be, because you still say that style, and yet you don't know how to recreate that same effect that character was given by the manga artist, who knew how the proportions were originally before he adjusted them to look like that, right? I hope you get what I mean by that. So you need to know that. So when you do end up going out there drawing by your own, please save yourself the terror and the number of years of having to unlearn what you learned. Please do use reference. Do draw from your imagination once in a while, because that's useful. That's really helpful. You need to know how to draw from your mind, because you do not want to be the type of guy that can't come up with stuff, come up with interesting poses. As much as you need reference for them, there are times when you really need to get that pose out from your mind without having to look at any reference, right? You do need to practice that. But then again, you do need to have reference. You do need to use it when need be, right? When you do not know something, when you do not know how a certain pose is like, where a certain muscle is, where how a cat moves, how a lion really looks like. If you don't want to end up drawing a dinosaur and call it a lion, so you need to know all that. You gotta have reference. You gotta use it. Just use it. Don't feel bad about it. Use it. Look for that interesting artist. Look at the pose that they used, and look up reference for that. You draw that pose. Come out with it. Don't feel guilty, but don't straight up. If you straight up copy it, it's still okay, man. Copy the hell out of it, but just don't claim it's yours. Once you copy the same exact thing, it's not yours. It's you just give some credit to the person that actually drew it initially, right? once you do that, you'll be in a good place, right? So yeah, that's mostly what I have to say about references. I think I've gone on a long tangent for this video, but I really wanted you guys to know some of those interesting things about background design and art, and it's my first video, but it should be interesting for you guys to figure out more about what really goes into background design when you're beginning, or art in general. If you have certain questions to yourself, some doubts, yeah. So that has been me, and I think I'll end here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and link up if you can. I'm on Instagram as Master Rui. I'm on Facebook, and you can also find me on YouTube, Master Luis Lubega, and Jemo Animated Short Films. You can find those at my YouTube videos, channels, right? Yeah, you can find my work on Webtoons or Watuka. It's a webcomic I worked on for 5 years now, right? Yeah, 5 years, and it's up online. It's a whole book done, 25 chapters, and I think you might find it interesting. It will show you sort of like the progression I made from chapter 1 to chapter 25. There's a big difference, and if you read it, you'll notice that, and you'll bear me witness that what I'm telling you is true. And I hope you take what I say today as a good, interesting guide for you to figure out more about the kind of work you want to do, right? All right. Thank you, and hope you have a great day. Until next time, dream of space.